You know what this is?
Empty
soup. That's a term that's used in Washington when somebody from Congress is sent there and really doesn't do anything. They could just as easily send an empty soup in the chair. Oh, sure, they get their talking points of their party. They vote the way their party tells them to, but that's just about it. Well, some might say that Tom Latham is an empty soup. I know he's not very informed on the war. We just had this meeting last week that Jim told, it was last week or 2 weeks? Last week, just last week, that Jim talked about, and Sue was there, and Kevin was there. There's another high school student, my daughter, and Greg was there too. And we sat around the room, and it was clear the least informed person in that room was our congressman. And that's not an exaggeration. Back me up on that, Greg. Oh, yeah. Isn't that true? It was just amazing, some of the things he said. There were some moments of lucidity. He did admit that the Iraq War was a mistake, and that's the first time I've heard him say it. The invasion was a mistake, and that we were misled into that war. So I was pretty impressed with that. So I pressed on, who misled us into the war? I thought he would say George Bush. Gee. No, he says it was the United Nations and international intelligence that misled us. I kid you not. When I confronted him with the fact that over 50% of Iowa Republicans, over 50% want us out of Iraq. That showed up in 3 different surveys this year already. 50%, more than 50% of Republicans want us out. He said he would rather lose an election than have his children and grandchildren living under Sharia law.
Oh my goodness.
He said this. So in his mind, setting a date for withdrawal will lead to the overthrow of the world, or at least the United States, by radical Muslims who will impose on us their government, their schools, their religion. And our grandchildren will be living under Islam law. Wow. Give me a break. We just can't accept this gibberish anymore. And that's all it is gibberish.
It's a great crowd. I want to report that neither Senator Grassley nor Representative Latham tonight, so we have the empty suit and the lawnmower, signifying them with the empty chairs, mother of an Iraq War veteran. I'm also the Iowa director of the Iraq Summer Campaign, and this is our ending event, our culmination of the summer's events. Today I'm serving as the host for this unprecedented Take a Stand Town Hall meeting, and I want to thank you all so much for attending.
Our Progressive Club, just a group that aims high. We do a lot of politically left type things, a lot of anti-war things, things for Darfur. But I just want to say a few words on actually taking action against the war. I'd like to start with a quote from Cesar Chavez. He once said, "Nonviolence is not an action, it is not discussion, it is not for the timid or weak. Nonviolence is hard work." Although Mr. Chavez died over a decade ago, this quote is still as relevant as ever. We will never have every American on our side. There will always be those who argue that we are fighting terrorism, making America more secure, etc. They can have their own opinions, but what we have now is 2/3 of America on our side. Poll after poll, be it CNN, CBS News, ABC News, they show that 60, 65, even near 70% of Americans do not approve of the war. But the war goes on, people still die, and money is still wasted. This is what we need to do now, in 2007. With 200 million Americans on our side, we must all stand together to end this war. Just condemning the war without action is not enough. Take action now and don't stop until we get what we want. If every one of us does our part, then we will end this war. Proudly hold a sign of peace at an anti-war rally. Continually write letters to both your congressmen, Grassley and Latham, letting them know that you disapprove of this war. With this meeting, we will send a loud message to Mr. Grassley and Mr. Latham that Iowans do not and will not stand for this war.
Since the start of the Iraq War, more than 4 years ago, over 3,700 U.S. soldiers have been killed in Iraq.
It doesn't take a Democrat or a Republican to know when wrong is wrong. And it's time to cut from Iraq and spend the money that we're spending there to take care of our troops that have been there now. My son served in Iraq for a year. When he came home, immediately once he was home, he showed signs that he wasn't able to adjust to what he'd just been through. The VA at that time wasn't in the news about all the kind of things that had been going on with the veterans and the help that they needed. And the VA did turn him away. They didn't have room for him that day. He broke down 3 days before he died and told me about some really awful things that happened over there. He was really, really upset with the children that were dying over there, and he knew he couldn't save them. And he was upset that the people that he thought that he was going over there to help didn't want us there.
No matter how horrible this war is, or how much material and political power the forces that lobbied for it from the beginning and continue to lobby for it today have, the peace movement can end this war. It's likely that hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians have died because of this war. Now it's only a matter of convincing our political representatives to come into line with the American and the Iraqi people. We need to create a political climate in this country that would make politicians who do not support withdrawal from Iraq completely unelectable. In order to do this, we need to be relentless. From now until the day that our troops are back home, we need constant action. Action in the streets. We need to create a climate that no matter where Tom Latham or George Bush choose to look, whether it's in the papers, on the radio, in the streets, everywhere, they see people mad as hell saying, "End this war now."
We have recently learned that the much discussed Petraeus report is actually going to be the White House report, with limited input from the general.
Pride in our history and fighting for our constitutional freedoms.
Most recently, Robert Fisk, a journalist for The Independent who lives in the region, has said that nearly every country in that region has some kind of United States military infrastructure, with the exception of Iran. According to Jimmy Carter, most recently, quote, "The primary reason for the invasion of Iraq was to establish military bases." Both houses of Congress voted last year to declare no permanent bases, but the language disappeared in committee from the final legislation. The time for the discussion of permanent military bases is certainly now.
We know the cost of lives lost there and lives lost at home and bodies broken and minds crippled and families suffering terribly with their loved ones.
I personally went to Iraq in 2006. I volunteered for a position where I could advise the Iraqi army and get a better viewpoint of what Iraq was like. And that's when I started to become cynical about politicians. Because from there, you get news about once a month, I don't know. And what I heard on the radio, or what I saw on TV, not only the rhetoric that politicians were using was so disconnected from what I saw on the ground, but also the policies that they were making were so disconnected from what I saw on the ground. In particular, the position meant that I could speak directly to high-ranking Iraqi army officials. All of them told me that they were more confused than anything else when they had heard U.S. claims of weapons of mass destruction. That position also let me live along. The position also meant that I'd live among Iraqi civilians. Now, some of them, many of them, in fact, told me that they wanted the U.S. out of Iraq. And the rest of them, they showed me through their actions that they would not do anything to help their own country unless Americans were gone. Also put me high enough in the totem pole that I could see just how misguided our contemporary strategy in Iraq was. And for those reasons, I feel that we need to start pulling our troops out of Iraq. Only a training surge, an advising surge, and a diplomacy surge can disentangle us from that country. But more important than that leadership, more than anything else, we all need to realize that moving away from Iraq is something that's important enough that we have to come together again, just like we came together after September 11, so that America can once again bounce back stronger than we were before. Thank you. God bless America.